The chamber was enormous, floating in the darkness of space around a dying star. Inside, thousands of aliens from hundreds of different worlds sat in their designated seats. Some had scales, others had fur, and many looked like nothing a human mind could easily understand. They were all here for one purpose: to decide what to do about humanity. Ambassador Jiwoo stood in the center of the circular room. A beam of light fell on him from above, making him feel small and exposed. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. For 30 years he had represented Earth in this place. He had made friends, negotiated treaties, and tried to show that humans deserved their place among the stars. Today, all of that work was about to end. The Speaker of the Council was a being made of living crystal. Light passed through its body in strange patterns as it spoke. The Council has heard all arguments. The human species has expanded too quickly. They have taken too much. They do not respect the ancient ways. We have reached our decision. Jiwoo felt his heart beating faster, but he kept his face calm. Behind him, in the human observation section, Captain Tae-sung and Dr. Hye-jin watched in silence. Tae-sung was a military man, broad-shouldered and strong, with scars on his hands from old battles. Hye-jin was thin and focused, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. She had been taking notes throughout the entire trial. The vote is final, the speaker continued. 731 species vote for exile. 116 vote against. Humanity will leave all territories beyond the Orion Spur. You have 10 standard years to comply. A wave of sound filled the chamber. Some aliens clicked in approval. Others whistled or hummed. A few, the ones who had voted to let humans stay, sat in silent disappointment. Jiwoo closed his eyes for just a moment. 10 years. They were being kicked out of half the galaxy. The speaker's voice cut through the noise. Does the human representative wish to speak? Jiwoo looked up at the thousands of alien faces watching him. He could argue. He could beg. He could threaten. But instead he smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. We accept the Council's decision, he said clearly. His voice carried through the chamber without any sign of anger or fear. Humanity will comply with the exile. We will withdraw from all disputed territories within the time given. The chamber went quiet. This was not the reaction anyone expected. The Varathians, ancient beings who had pushed hardest for the exile, shifted in their seats. The Kelrim, who could read surface thoughts, leaned forward with confusion. However, Jiwoo continued, I want the Council to know something. You have made this decision based on fear. You fear how fast we learn. You fear how far we reach. You fear that we might one day stand as equals to the ancient races. He paused, letting his words sink in. Your fear is not unfounded, but I suspect you will regret this vote far sooner than you imagine. Is that a threat? One of the Varathian counselors demanded, its crystalline body flashing red. No, Jiwoo said calmly. It is a prediction. The speaker struck the floor with its staff, creating a sound like breaking glass. The decision stands. This council is adjourned. As the aliens began to leave, Tae-sung and Hye-jin joined Jiwoo on the central platform. The captain looked angry, his jaw tight. 10 years to abandon 200 colony worlds. They know that is barely enough time. It is enough, Hye-jin said quietly. She was looking at her data tablet, scrolling through files that no one else could see. Actually, it is more than enough, Jiwoo nodded. Contact Earth. Tell them the council has voted exactly as we predicted. Begin protocol homecoming. Tae-sung's expression changed from anger to understanding. Then he smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Finally, after all these years of playing nice. As they walked toward their ship, a Kelrim investigator named Thexlin approached them. It moved on 6 legs, its body covered in patterns that changed color with its thoughts. Ambassador Jiwoo, your reaction to the exile was unusual. Most species would protest. Most species do not think long-term, Jiwoo replied. The Kelrim have existed for 50,000 years. We invented long-term thinking. Hye-jin laughed softly. Did you really? Then you should understand what comes next. Thexlin's patterns flickered with confusion, but the humans did not explain. They boarded their shuttle and left the council chamber behind. Once they were in space, heading back to human territory, Tae-sung finally allowed himself to relax. Do you think any of them suspect? He asked. Some of the smarter ones might, Jiwoo said. But by the time they figure it out, it will not matter. Hye-jin pulled up a star map on the main display. It showed the Milky Way galaxy with human territory marked in blue. 200 systems scattered across several spiral arms. But when she pressed another button, the map changed. Thousands of new markers appeared far beyond the edge of the galaxy itself. Green dots, so many that they looked like clouds. The first return signal came in yesterday, she said. Fleet Group Alpha has confirmed arrival in the staging area. 320 billion souls, 2,000 warships, 500 factory worlds, and the others? Taesung asked. Fleet Groups Beta through Epsilon are still in transit, but they will arrive within 5 years. By the time our 10 years of exile are up, we will have more people and ships outside this galaxy than inside it. Jiwoo stared at the map. His grandfather had been one of the planners of Project Distant Star, the secret mission launched 300 years ago. Back then, humanity had just developed its first faster-than-light drives. They were alone in the galaxy, or so they thought. But the smartest humans knew that eventually they would meet other species, and they knew that those species might not be friendly. So they sent out 50 colony ships, each carrying 10 million people in cryo-sleep. The ships traveled at near light speed toward other galaxies. For the people on those ships, only 30 years passed. But in the home galaxy, 3 centuries went by. 3 centuries for the colonies to grow, to build, to prepare. When humanity finally met the other species of the galaxy, the leaders of Earth said nothing about the colonies. They played the role of newcomers. Eager to learn and trade, they joined the Galactic Council and followed its rules. And all the while, the colonies grew stronger in the darkness beyond the stars. The Council thinks they are exiling 5 billion humans, Taesung said. They have no idea that they are about to face 500 billion. Let them stay ignorant a little longer, Jiwoo said. We have waited 300 years. We can wait 10 more. The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the Council chamber far behind. In 10 years, everything would change. The galaxy would learn that humanity did not just adapt to exile. They had prepared for it centuries before it happened, and now the time for preparation was over. 300 years earlier, Earth was very different. The sky was cleaner then, and fewer ships traveled between the stars. Humanity had just invented faster-than-light travel 5 years before, and everyone was excited about the future. But not everyone was optimistic. Admiral Kyung-soo stood in the military command center deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. He was 50 years old, with short black hair starting to turn gray and a face that rarely smiled. On the screens around him, 50 massive ships hung in orbit above Earth. Each ship was 10 kilometers long, built in secret over 20 years. They had cost more money than most nations had in their entire treasuries. Final checks complete. Admiral, said Engineer Yuna. She was younger than Kyung-soo, barely 30, but she had designed most of the critical systems on these ships. Her hair was pulled back tightly and her hands moved quickly over the controls. All colony ships are ready for departure. And the passengers? Kyung-soo asked. 500 million people are in cryosleep across all 50 ships, 10 million per vessel. They are stable and will remain frozen until arrival. Kyung-soo nodded slowly. 500 million people. That was 1/20th of Earth's entire population. They had volunteered, all of them, knowing they would never see their home again. Knowing that when they woke up, everyone they knew on Earth would have been dead for centuries. Dr. Dongwoo entered the command center carrying a data pad. He was a quantum physicist, thin and nervous, always looking like he had not slept enough. Admiral, I need to explain the time calculations again. It is important that the government understands what we are doing. I understand it fine, Kyung-soo said. The ships will travel at 99% of light speed. Because of time dilation, the people on the ships will experience about 30 years of travel. But here on Earth, 300 years will pass. Exactly, Dongwoo said. By the time they arrive at their destination galaxies, Earth will be in the year 2547. We will all be long dead. Our great-great-great-grandchildren will be old. But the colonists will be young and ready to build new worlds, Yuna added. Kyung-soo walked to the window that looked out at the dark ocean. Do you think I do not understand what we are doing? We are sending 500 million people into the unknown. We are betting that Earth will need them someday, even though we do not know what dangers we will face. The probability models show that humanity will encounter other intelligent species within 150 years, Dongwoo said, and the probability that those species will be friendly to a newcomer race is only 32%. So we are preparing for the worst, Yuna said. We are preparing to survive, Kyung-soo corrected. That is what humans do best. The plan was called Project Distant Star, and it had been created by a secret committee of scientists, military leaders, and politicians who all agreed on one thing: humanity needed a backup plan. If Earth was ever destroyed, if humanity was ever threatened with extinction, the colonies would survive. They would be so far away that no enemy could reach them all. Each colony ship carried more than just people. In their massive cargo holds were machines that could build anything. Self-replicating factories that could take raw materials and turn them into more factories, more ships, more weapons. The ships carried the complete knowledge of human civilization. Every book, every scientific paper, every military strategy, every piece of art and music ever created. Launch time is in 1 hour, Yuna announced. All department heads are reporting ready status. Kyung-soo turned to face his crew. Send the final message to the ships. Tell them that Earth believes in them. Tell them that they carry the future of our species. And tell them that if we never call them home, they should build something beautiful in the dark. The message was sent. On each of the 50 ships, the last crew members who were still awake read the words from their admiral. Then they too entered their cryopods and went to sleep. The ships were fully automated for the journey. Artificial intelligence would guide them across the vast empty space between galaxies. As the countdown reached 0, the 50 ships activated their engines. Blue light flared around each vessel as they accelerated away from Earth. They did not travel together. Each ship went in a different direction, toward a different galaxy, spreading humanity's children across the universe. Kyung-soo watched them go on the main screen. One by one, the ships reached the required speed and their signals began to stretch and fade due to time dilation. Within an hour, all 50 were gone, invisible to any telescope, moving so fast that they were like ghosts. They are away, Yuna said quietly. She was crying, though she tried to hide it. Her brother was on ship 17. May they find peace, Dongwoo added. He was not religious, but the words felt right. Kyung-soo stood in silence for a long time. Then he spoke to the empty room, though he knew no one on the ships could hear him. By the time anyone realizes you are out there, you will have had centuries to prepare. If humanity ever needs you, you will be ready. And if we never call you home, you will have saved our species anyway. The years passed quickly after that. Kyung-soo lived to be 83 years old. He never told anyone outside the secret committee about Project Distant Star. The secret was kept by fewer than 1,000 people across the entire planet, and each one took the knowledge to their grave. 50 years after the launch, humanity made first contact with an alien species. The Kelrim came to Earth in peace, offering trade and knowledge. Humanity joined the Galactic Council and began to spread across the stars within their own galaxy. The new leaders of Earth did not know about the 50 colony ships. The secret had been buried too deep. But some people remembered. In certain military archives, in encrypted files that required 5 different keys to open, the truth was recorded. And every 50 years, a new guardian was chosen to keep the secret. They were told about Project Distant Star, shown the evidence, and given a simple instruction: if humanity is ever truly threatened, activate Protocol Homecoming. 150 years after the launch, those guardians added new information to the secret files. The colony ships had begun sending back signals. Quantum-entangled communicators, impossible to intercept or trace, whispered across the void between galaxies. The colonies had arrived. They had woken from their sleep. They had begun to build. 200 years after launch, the signals reported something impossible. Each colony had grown beyond anyone's expectations. The self-replicating factories had worked better than designed. One colony of 10 million people had become a civilization of 10 billion, and there were 50 colonies. 250 years after launch, the guardian of the secret was a woman named Ambassador Minna. She was the one who first realized that the Galactic Council was turning against humanity. She heard the whispers in the alien councils. She saw the fear in their eyes when they looked at human ships. She knew what was coming. She opened the old files and read about Project Distant Star. Then she contacted certain people in the government and military. It is time, she told them. The threat is real. Prepare for Protocol Homecoming. 300 years after the launch, Ambassador Jiwoo stood in the Galactic Council chamber and accepted humanity's exile with a calm smile. He smiled because he knew the truth. He smiled because the colonies were coming home. He smiled because the Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. They thought they were exiling a weak species of 5 billion people. They did not know about the 500 billion who had been growing stronger in the darkness, who had been building ships and weapons and entire civilizations far beyond anyone's reach. They did not know that humanity had planned for this day 3 centuries ago. The sleeping giant was awake, and it was coming home. 3 years had passed since the Council's exile decree. Across 200 star systems, humanity was packing up and leaving. They dismantled their space stations, evacuated their colonies, and loaded everything onto massive transport ships. To the aliens who watched, it seemed like humanity was obeying the Council's orders without complaint. But investigator Thexlan was not convinced. Thexlan was a Kelrim, one of the oldest intelligent species in the galaxy. The Kelrim could read surface thoughts and sense emotions from other beings. They had existed for 50,000 years and considered themselves the wisest species in the Council. Thexlan had been investigating humanity for 2 years, trying to understand how such a young species had advanced so quickly. Now, standing in the ruins of a human colony on the planet Vistara, Thexlan felt deeply troubled. The colony had been home to 2 million humans just 3 months ago. Now it was empty. But that was not what bothered Thexlan. What bothered the investigator was how empty it was. The humans had taken everything, not just their personal belongings and equipment, but things that made no sense to take. They had removed every computer server, even the ones that were 10 years old and should have been worthless. They had taken apart their factories and loaded even the smallest pieces onto ships. They had erased every database, wiped every storage device, and filled in every mine shaft. It was like they were trying to remove all evidence that they had ever been there. Why? Thexlan spoke aloud, knowing no one would answer. Why take such care if you are simply leaving? A young Kelrim assistant named Rexel approached, moving carefully on 6 legs across the empty plaza. Investigator, we have completed the scan of the underground facilities. They are completely empty. Even the power conduits have been removed. And the data cores? Gone, every single one. The humans even took the backup systems that were sealed in concrete. Thexlan's color pattern shifted to deep purple, indicating confusion and concern. In 50,000 years of Kelrim history, they had seen many species rise and fall. They had seen empires collapse and new ones emerge. But they had never seen a species retreat this thoroughly. Send a message to the Council, Thexlan said. Tell them I need access to the classified monitoring data from the Outer Rim. Back on the Council station, Commander Nari sat in a small office reviewing reports. She was the head of humanity's intelligence network, a position that officially did not exist. She was 40 years old with sharp eyes and a mind that never stopped analyzing everything around her. Her job was to make sure that the aliens never learned humanity's secrets. Her computer beeped with an alert. Someone was requesting access to long-range sensor data from the outer rim of the galaxy. Someone was looking for things that should not be found. She opened a secure communication channel. This is Nari, we have a problem. One of the Kelrim investigators is getting suspicious. On the other end, Dr. Boram responded immediately. She was one of humanity's top quantum physicists, in charge of the secret communication network. Which investigator? Thexlan. The smart one. How smart? Smart enough to notice that we are taking things we should not care about. Smart enough to ask the right questions. Boram was quiet for a moment. Then she said, the return signals are still coming through. If Thexlan gets access to the right sensors, the investigator might detect them. Can we shut them down? Not without losing contact with the fleets. And they are only 3 years out. We need them to know where to go when they arrive. Nari thought carefully. Then we need to give Thexlan something else to find. Something that explains everything but tells nothing. 2 weeks later, Thexlan finally received permission to access the classified sensor data. The Kelrim investigator had to promise not to share the information without Council approval, but Thexlan agreed. The data was downloaded to a secure terminal and Thexlan began to review it. At first, there was nothing unusual. Normal background radiation, standard stellar activity, random quantum fluctuations. But then Thexlan saw something that should not be there. Faint signals buried deep in the noise originating from beyond the galaxy itself. They were using quantum entanglement, which meant they could not be intercepted or traced. But they could be detected if you knew what to look for. And Thexlan knew. The Kelrim investigator traced the signal patterns back through time. They had been transmitting for years, decades. The earliest signals were 300 years old, 300 years. Thexlin's entire body flashed bright white, the Kelrim sign of shock and realization. 300 years ago, humanity had barely developed faster than light travel. They had not yet met any alien species. They were alone in the galaxy, primitive and weak, or so everyone thought. Thexlin began calculating. If humans had sent ships into deep space 300 years ago, traveling at near light speed, those ships would have experienced time dilation. For every year that passed on the ships, decades would pass in normal space. The people on those ships would still be relatively young, but they would have had centuries of real time to build and grow. And if those ships carried self-replicating technology, the kind of machines that could build more machines, then a small colony could become very large very quickly. 10 million people could become 10 billion. One ship could become 1,000 ships. Thexlin needed to confront someone. The investigator went directly to Commander Nari's office, not bothering with protocol or appointments. Nari was waiting, sitting calmly behind her desk as if she had expected this visit. "Investigator Thexlin," she said pleasantly. "Please sit down." "I will stand," Thexlin replied. "I have questions and I want honest answers." "I will give you honest answers if you ask honest questions." Thexlin's pattern shifted to red, showing anger. "How many?" "How many what?" Nari asked, though she clearly knew exactly what Thexlin meant. "How many ships did you send? How many colonies? How many people?" Nari leaned back in her chair. 50 ships. 10 million people each. That was 300 years ago. And now? Now? Nari smiled, but it was not a warm smile. "We stopped counting at 1 trillion. That was 50 years ago by their timeline, which is about 15 years ago in our time. They have been busy." Thexlin's legs nearly gave out. The investigator grabbed the edge of the desk for support. 1 trillion people? That is impossible. No, it is exponential growth. Your species should understand that. You have existed for 50,000 years. How long did it take you to grow from 10 million to your current population of 2 trillion? 20,000 years, Thexlin said quietly. "We did it in 300. Because we did not have to wait for natural reproduction. We had machines that could build anything, including more people. Cloning, artificial wombs, accelerated growth. When you have infinite resources and no one watching, you can grow very fast." Thexlin sat down heavily. "The Council exiled 5 billion humans from this galaxy. But you already have 500 billion outside the galaxy. More than that now, probably. Like I said, we stopped counting." "Why?" Thexlin asked. "Why did you do this?" "You sent these people away before you even knew we existed." Nari's expression became serious. "Because we are not stupid. We knew that eventually we would meet other species out here, and we knew that those species would have a choice. They could welcome us as equals, or they could see us as a threat. We hoped for the first, but we prepared for the second. And now the Council has chosen exile. Yes. You made our decision for us. You told us we do not belong here. Fine, we will leave. But we are not leaving weak and scared. We are leaving strong and ready." Thexlin stood up, patterns shifting to dark blue, the color of deep thought. "I have to report this to the Council." "I know," Nari said. "Go ahead. Tell them everything. It does not matter anymore. The fleets are already on their way back. They will arrive in 7 years. By then, every human colony in this galaxy will be evacuated, and then the colonies will return to claim what should have been ours all along. The Council will prepare. They will build defenses. Let them try." Nari pulled up a holographic display showing ship designs that made no sense to Kelrim eyes. "These are the ships that are coming. They were built with 300 years of isolated development. While we were here playing politics with the Council, they were out there pushing the limits of physics. Their ships can do things your species has not even dreamed of." Thexlin looked at the designs and felt fear for the first time in a long life. This will be war. Only if the Council is stupid enough to fight. We do not want war. We want respect. We want our place among the stars without being told where we can and cannot go. The investigator left without another word, hurrying to report everything to the Council. Nari watched Thexlin go, then opened a communication to Boram. "It is done. They know." "Good," Boram replied. "Let them spend the next 7 years being afraid. Maybe they will learn that exiling humanity was their biggest mistake." The year was 2550, exactly 3 years before the exile deadline. The Galactic Council had prepared for this moment as best they could. After Investigator Thexland's report, panic had spread through the council chambers. 700 species suddenly realized they had made a terrible mistake, but it was too late to take back the exile vote, so they prepared for war instead. Council Prime Velcor stood on the command deck of the Eternal Watchman, the largest warship ever built by the Council Alliance. Velcor was a Varathian, a being made of living crystal that had existed for 3,000 years. In all that time, Velcor had never felt fear. But now, staring at the long-range sensor displays, fear was all the ancient being could feel. "Report," Velcor commanded. The tactical officer, a four-armed Malthax named Crix, checked the displays with all four hands moving at once. "The human evacuation is 97% complete. Only 3 colony worlds remain occupied. All human ships are moving toward the outer rim. And beyond the rim?" Crix hesitated. "The sensors are picking up massive energy signatures. Whatever is out there, it is big. Very big." Velcor's crystalline body shifted to a dark red color. "How big?" "We estimate at least 3,000 large vessels. But the readings are strange. The ships are not where they appear to be. It is like they are phasing in and out of normal space. Impossible. No species has that technology." "The humans do now," said a voice from behind them. Captain Taesung walked onto the command deck, accompanied by 2 council security officers. He was older now, with more gray in his hair, but his eyes were still sharp and his posture was military straight. "You should not be here," Velcor said. "This is a council military vessel. You invited me here for a final negotiation," Taesung replied calmly. "Or have you forgotten?" Velcor had not forgotten. The council had decided to make one last attempt at peace before the human fleets arrived. They had offered to reduce the exile, to allow humans to keep some of their colonies, but Taesung's response had been simple. "Too late. Your people are about to start a war they cannot win," Velcor said. "We have gathered the largest military fleet in galactic history. 200,000 warships from 600 species. You cannot defeat us all." Taesung walked to the main view screen and looked out at the assembled council fleet. It was truly impressive. Ships of every size and shape, weapons powered and ready, all waiting in formation at the edge of human territory. "Tell me something," Taesung said. "How long did it take to build this fleet?" 3 years of constant construction," Crix answered. "Every species contributed their best ships and crews." 3 years. Taesung nodded. "The colonies had 300 years. Do you understand what that means?" Before anyone could answer, the sensors began screaming alarms. Every screen on the command deck turned red. Crix's forearms moved frantically across the controls. "They are here. Multiple contacts emerging from faster than light. Hundreds of them. Thousands." On the view screen, space itself began to tear open. Not the normal blue glow of standard FTL drives, but something else. Black holes appeared in reality, and from each hole came a ship. They were massive, each one the size of a small moon, built with lines and angles that seemed to bend light around them. "What are those?" Velcor whispered. "Those are colony ships," Taesung said. "The same ones that left Earth 300 years ago. But they have been modified, enhanced, perfected. More ships kept appearing, smaller vessels, sleek and fast, surrounding the massive colony ships like a swarm of insects protecting their queen. They moved in perfect coordination, thousands of ships acting as one mind. Fleet Admiral J1, request to speak with Council Prime Velcor, the communications officer announced. "Put it on screen," Velcor ordered. The image that appeared was of a man who looked to be about 60 years old. He had scars on his face, the kind that came from cryosleep, and his eyes were hard and cold. He wore a uniform that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before, black with silver markings that seemed to shift and move. "I am Fleet Admiral J1, Supreme Commander of the Distant Star Armada. I speak for 1,200,000,000,000 human citizens who were born in the dark between galaxies. We have come home." Velcor's crystal body flickered with unstable light. "This is an act of war. You are violating council space." "Violating?" J1's laugh was harsh. "You exiled us from this space. You said we do not belong here, so this is no longer council space. As of this moment, every system that humanity ever colonized is now under our protection." "We will not allow it," Velcor said, trying to sound strong. "We have 200,000 warships ready to fight." then fight. Before Velcor could respond, the human fleet moved. They did not attack, but they did something that should have been impossible. They simply passed through the Council defensive line as if it was not there. "Shields up," Crix shouted. "All weapons fire!" The Council fleet opened fire with everything they had. Laser beams, plasma torpedoes, antimatter missiles, and weapons that existed in dimensions the human eye could not see. Enough firepower to destroy 100 planets struck the human fleet directly, and nothing happened. The human ships continued moving, completely unaffected. The weapons passed through them as if the ships were ghosts. No shields flashed, no armor cracked. The attack simply did not touch them. "They are not in our dimension," the science officer said in a shaking voice. "They are phasing between realities. Our weapons cannot hit them." "How is that possible?" Velcor demanded. Taesung smiled sadly. 300 years of research with no one telling them what was impossible. They learned to do things that the Council said could not be done. On the screen, Jaewon spoke again. "We do not want to kill you. We do not want war, but we will not be denied our home. Every human colony world in this galaxy is ours. We are taking them back. Stand aside or be removed." A Varathian admiral in the fleet commanding 50,000 ships refused to back down. "All vessels, full assault pattern! Target the largest human ships." The Council fleet charged forward, weapons blazing. It was a sight that would have terrified any species in the galaxy. But the humans did not seem afraid. The human ships finally responded. Not with weapons, but with something else. A wave of energy rippled out from the human fleet, and suddenly every Council ship stopped moving. Their engines shut down. Their weapons went dark. Their systems simply turned off. "What happened?" Velcor shouted. "Crix, report. All systems are offline." "The power cores are still active, but nothing is responding. It is like the ships have been turned off." Taesung walked to the command console and placed his hand on it. "Electromagnetic pulse, but not the kind you know. This one is targeted, selective, and powered by energy harvested from black holes. It shuts down anything that is not specifically protected against it. And your ships are not protected." The Eternal Watchman drifted in space, powerless. Around it, 200,000 other ships floated helplessly, and through them the human fleet continued its advance, heading toward the nearest human colony world that still had a small Council observation force. On the screen, Jaewon addressed the Council fleet one more time. "You have 3 options. First, you can accept that we are reclaiming our territory and leave peacefully. Second, you can stay here floating in space while your life support slowly runs out. Third, you can try to stop us again and we will destroy you. Choose wisely. You have 1 hour." The transmission ended. The human fleet continued moving, unstoppable and unbeatable. Velcor looked at Taesung with something close to desperation. "You planned this, all of it. The exile, the colonies, everything." "Not me," Taesung said. "My great-great-great-grandfather planned it. We just executed his vision. You feared us when we were children reaching for the stars. Now we are grown, and you have no choice but to accept it." In that moment, Velcor understood the terrible truth. The Council had not exiled humanity. They had given humanity the perfect excuse to become something far more powerful. And now that power had returned to claim what was always meant to be theirs. Within 30 minutes, the Council fleet began retreating. They had no choice. Their ships were helpless, their weapons useless, and their pride shattered. The human fleet continued its advance, reclaiming world after world without firing a single shot. The age of Council dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. 2 years after the return of the human fleets, the Galactic Council met again. But this time, the meeting was very different. The chamber had been relocated to neutral space, far from any Council homeworld. And for the first time in 50,000 years, the Council was not the one in control. Ambassador Haiwan walked into the chamber with the confidence of someone who held all the power. She was the daughter of Fleet Admiral Jaewon, born on one of the colony ships during the long journey home. She had spent her entire life in space between galaxies, and to her, the politics of the Milky Way were almost amusing in their smallness. Behind her walked Dr. Hai Jin, now in her 70s but still sharp-minded. She had been there when the exile was declared, and she had worked hard to prepare for this moment. Next to her was Ambassador Jiwoo, the man who had accepted the exile with a smile. He looked older and tired, but his eyes still held the wisdom that had served humanity so well. Council Prime Velcor stood at the center of the chamber, but the ancient Varathian no longer commanded respect. The crystalline being's light was dim, showing exhaustion and defeat. Around the chamber, representatives from 847 species watched in silence. The council recognizes Ambassador Haiwan of the Human Federation, Velcor announced, voice flat and emotionless. Haiwan stepped into the speaker's circle. Thank you, Council Prime. I will be brief because we all know why we are here. 2 years ago, you attempted to exile humanity from this galaxy. Instead, you triggered the return of 1 trillion humans who had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Today, humanity controls 2,000 star systems. That is 10 times more than we held before the exile. Murmurs filled the chamber. Some species clicked in distress. Others whistled in disbelief. This is unacceptable, said a representative of the Kelrim. You have taken territory by force. You have violated every treaty and agreement. No, Yijin said, stepping forward. You violated the agreements when you exiled us for no crime other than existing. You broke the social contract of the council. We simply responded accordingly. You brought an army. Another alien shouted. You threatened us with weapons we cannot defend against. We demonstrated our capabilities, Haiwan replied calmly. We did not fire a single shot in anger. We did not destroy a single ship. We simply showed you that fighting us would be pointless. That is not an attack. That is mercy. Velcor raised a hand for silence. What do you want, Ambassador? We cannot simply give you 2,000 systems. Other species have claims to those territories. Then they can give up those claims, Haiwan said. Or they can try to take those systems from us. But I think we all know how that would end. Jiwoo moved to stand beside Haiwan. The council made a choice 3 years ago. You decided that humanity was too dangerous to coexist with. You were not entirely wrong. We are dangerous. But what you failed to understand is that we could have been your greatest allies. Instead, you made us your greatest problem. So what now? Velcor asked. Do you demand the council dissolve? Do you want to rule the galaxy? No, Haiwan said firmly. We want something much simpler. We want equal representation. We want no restrictions on our expansion into unclaimed space. We want protection for younger species who join the council, so they do not face the same discrimination we faced. And we want the species who voted for our exile to submit to technological audits. Technological audits? A Varathian counselor demanded. That is a violation of sovereignty. You exiled us because you feared our technology, Yejin said. Now we fear yours. We need to know that you are not building weapons specifically designed to fight us. If you have nothing to hide, the audits will be simple and quick. The chamber erupted in argument. Species shouted at each other in 100 different languages. Some demanded that humanity be punished. Others called for compromise. A few wise ones remained silent, knowing that they had no choice. After an hour of chaos, Velcor called for order. We will vote on the human proposals. All in favor of accepting the new terms? The vote was not even close. 821 species voted to accept. 26 voted against. Those 26 were the most prideful and ancient species, the ones who could not accept that a young race had surpassed them. The motion passes, Velcor announced. Humanity is granted equal representation on the council. Restrictions on human expansion are lifted. Protection protocols for younger species will be implemented, and technological audits will begin next month. Haiwan nodded. There is one more thing. Those 26 species who voted against us. They are free to refuse the new order, but if they do, they will no longer have access to human-controlled space. No trade, no travel, no communication. They can keep their pride, but they will lose access to 1/3 of the galaxy. You would divide the galaxy? A counselor asked in horror. You already divided it, Jiwoo said quietly. When you exiled us, we are simply making that division formal. Over the following months, 20 of the 26 holdout species changed their vote. They could not afford to be cut off from such a large portion of the galaxy. The 6 that remained defiant were ancient and proud, but they quickly found themselves isolated and irrelevant. Meanwhile, humanity's integration into the council transformed everything. Human technology began flowing into galactic markets, ships that could phase between dimensions, power cores that harvested energy from black holes, medical advances that extended life by centuries. In exchange, humanity learned from the ancient species, gaining knowledge of cultures and histories that spanned millions of years. But the greatest change was not technological or political. It was psychological. The younger species of the galaxy, the ones who had joined the Council in the last few thousand years, saw what humanity had done. They saw that it was possible to stand up to the ancient powers. They saw that youth and innovation could defeat age and tradition. A wave of reform swept through the Council. Species that had been marginalized for millennia began demanding equal treatment. The ancient species, already weakened by their defeat to humanity, had no choice but to agree. The entire structure of the Council changed, becoming more democratic and less dominated by the oldest civilizations. Dr. He Jin watched all of this from her office on Earth. She was 80 years old now, and she knew she would not live to see the full results of what humanity had accomplished. But she was satisfied. She opened her old files, the ones marked Project Distant Star, and read the original mission statement written 300 years ago. In case humanity faces exile or destruction, let this project serve as our insurance. We will spread to the furthest reaches of space beyond anyone's ability to harm us, and if we are ever called home, we will return not as victims but as victors. She smiled and closed the file. Then she wrote a final report to be sealed for 100 years. To whoever reads this in the future, know that everything we did was necessary. The Council forced our hand when they chose fear over friendship. We did not want to become the most powerful species in the galaxy. We wanted to be equals. But when they tried to make us lesser, we had no choice but to become greater. May future generations learn from our example. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and never let anyone tell you what you cannot achieve. 1 year later, Dr. Hai Jin passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was given a funeral attended by representatives from 400 species. Even former enemies came to pay respects to the woman who had helped guide humanity through its greatest challenge. Ambassador Ji Woo stood at her grave and spoke to the assembled crowd. She lived to see humanity rise from exile to equality. She lived to see the Council change from a hierarchy to a democracy. She lived to see her species become not just survivors but leaders. There are few who can say they accomplished so much in one lifetime. Fleet Admiral Jae Won attended the funeral as well, traveling from the outer colonies to Earth for the first time since the return. He stood beside Jiwoo and looked out at the crowd of aliens who had once tried to destroy humanity. My father was one of the original colonists, Jae Won said. He went to sleep in 2247 and woke up in 2277, 30 years older but 300 years in the future. He spent his entire life building ships and training soldiers for a war he hoped would never come. When we received the call to return home, he was 90 years old. He cried when he heard that the Council had exiled us because it meant everything he built would be needed. He died 5 years ago, but he died knowing that his work mattered, that humanity survived because people like him were willing to sacrifice everything. The crowd was silent. Even the Vorathians, who had pushed hardest for the exile, bowed their heads in respect. Captain Tae-sung, now retired but still strong, placed a hand on Jae-won's shoulder. Your father and everyone like him saved our species. Not through war or violence, but through preparation and foresight. That is the real lesson here. Not that we can build bigger weapons, but that we can think further ahead. As the funeral ended and the crowds dispersed, the three men stood together looking at Earth. It was a beautiful planet, blue and green and full of life. It was the homeworld that the exiles had left 300 years ago, and the homeworld they had fought to return to. Do you think the Council has finally learned their lesson? Jae-won asked. Some of them have, Jiwoo replied. The smart ones understand that we could have destroyed them but chose not to. The foolish ones still think we are a threat. We are a threat, Tae-sung said with a slight smile. Just not the kind they think. We are a threat to their old ways of thinking, a threat to their assumption that age equals wisdom, a threat to the idea that the galaxy belongs to whoever was here first. Good, Jae-won said. Let them be afraid. Fear breeds respect, and respect is all we ever wanted. As the sun set on Earth, casting long shadows across the graves of those who had made humanity's victory possible, the three men stood in silence. They were the last living witnesses to the exile and the return. Soon they too would pass away and the story would become history. But that history would echo through the galaxy for millions of years to come. The story of how humanity was exiled for being too ambitious, too dangerous, too young, and how that exile transformed them from a struggling species into the most powerful civilization in the galaxy, not through conquest or cruelty, but through preparation, patience, and the simple refusal to accept anyone else's limitations. The Galactic Council had tried to contain humanity. Instead, they had set them free. And the galaxy would never be the same.